Again, Erev Shabbos, everybody. Welcome to Jerry's Parsha Ponderings. This week we are going to very briefly discuss Parshat Shmini, this week's Parsha, as well as looking at it through the lens of Yom HaShoah, Yom HaZikaron, and Yom HaAtzmaut that we have coming up. Today actually is Yom HaShoah, and next week we will be celebrating Yom HaAtzmaut and commemorating Yom HaZikaron, Israel's Memorial Day, to commemorate and remember those that fell during our many wars. So, as far as Parshat Shmini goes, there are essentially two main parts to Parshat Shmini. Of course, the death of Nadav and Avihu, Aaron HaKohen's eldest children, and the laws of kashrut. So let's for a moment speak about what happened to Nadav and Avihu and what we can learn from that. So Nadav and Avihu died because they brought the Torah says, a strange fire, Eish Zara. Meaning what? Asher lo tzivo, that they were not commanded to bring. What does that mean? What did they do? They brought an extra carbon? And the answer is, yeah. They did something they were not supposed to do. They did something over and above, more than necessary. And for that, they were struck down. Now, it's a very, very strange and difficult parsha to understand, but essentially, Hashem was basically saying, listen, I didn't tell you to do that, so why'd you do it? They wanted to do more and go over and above. They were tzaddikim. They weren't bad people, chas v'shalom. They were kohanim. They served in the Kodesh Kodashim. And we're taught that sometimes too much is no good. This is the lesson of Nadav and Avihu, and it's difficult to say even because the Torah goes into, I don't want to say that. The Torah tells us the story about what happened, but the Mefarshim, they get into a lot of acrobatics as to what actually happened here, but if you learn the Pashtus, if you look straight up, sometimes more isn't better. Sometimes more isn't better, and this is a very important lesson. The Torah tells us in a number of places, don't go to the right and don't go to the left. Stay on the middle road. And we talk in these talks so much about the importance of the middle road. And this is really what we're talking about. I was told by one of my Rabbanim many years ago that you have to be very careful with minhagim, because minhagim are the letters of minhagim are the same letters as Gehenim, and it tells you how important a minhag is. On the other hand, minhagim are the same letters as Gehenim, and when your minhagim go against halacha, you gotta really look at that minhag. In certain communities, the minhagim are more important than the halacha. I differ with that in the most vehement way possible. But we really have to look and see, are we letting our minhag, and this comes on the week after Pesach, when, oh boy, you want to talk about minhagim. Pesach is the holiday of minhagim, whether you're Kitnius or Gebrachts or Chvezvust. I do neither. The But we have to think, are we letting our minhagim cause sinat chinam? That's very important. Friends of mine say, we don't mish on Pesach. What does mish mean? We don't go to this one's house or that one's house because everybody has different minhagim. Okay, that's nice. I guess. Personally, I think if you've gotten to that point, you have to re-examine the minhag. Because if it's something that's dividing Am Yisrael, it's a problem. Really, the halacha is, if, let's say, you're Ashkenazi and you go to a Sephardi Seder, you hold like the Baal Habayis. He eats kitnias, you can eat kitnias. He eats gebrachts, you can eat gebrachts. He, she, they. If we're letting it get to a point where we don't mish, that's a big problem. We learned last week, Shaloi Echad Bilvad. We didn't remain together. We were divided instead of being unified. I would re-examine the minhag. The key with the challah thing, don't even get me started. I would re-examine the minhag. Eish Zara. Don't be frummer than God. We have halachos. Follow the halacha. Don't get crazy, because when you do, the fire can come out. That Eish Zara could backfire, hence the term backfire, as we see from the graphic, and it could burn you. Let's talk for a minute about kashrus. And I've said this in the past, I'm going to revisit it. There's one animal that is mentioned in this week's Parsha. Only one that has one siman and not the other one. And it mentions four, but one particular siman and not the other siman. And that is the piggy, the pig. The pig is the only animal that has a split hoof and doesn't chew its cud. The Torah mentions other animals that chew their cud that don't have a split hoof. The camel, the hyrax, the hare. Yeah. Interesting, though, that, and I mentioned this also in the past, that over all the years since they found the Dead Sea Scrolls until today, there has never found an animal other than the ones mentioned that have those characteristics, which points to the fact that only the manufacturer could have possibly written this book, right? Because 2,500 years ago, and we know the Torah is more than 3,300 years old, but even if we go back to the dates of the Dead Sea Scrolls, who in the middle of the desert could have had that encyclopedic knowledge of zoology and marine biology to know that the animals that have scales, or rather the fish that have scales, also have fins, but not all the fish that have fins have scales? Who would have known that? You would have to go to the bottom of the Marianas and make sure that none of those anglerfish down there. But we're really here to talk about the pig that has the split hoof, but not the other siman, the chewing of the cud. And it's interesting that to this day, there are Jews that don't hold from nothing, but they won't put chazer in their mouth. Why? What's so interesting about this pig? Why even did Hashem make the pig? Just to show us. Because the pig is a hypocrite. The pig lays with its fisalach out with the split hoof, and it says, look at me how kosher I am. Look at how frum I am. The pig wears its kashrus right out front. When a pig lays down, the hooves are out front to show you, azay frim I am, yet you treif inside. This is what Hashem despises, and how Jews throughout the generations we knew, this we don't touch. Hypocrisy. As they used to say, the chassid and pelts. Right? Ruchi, my wife, always says you could put a yarmulke and tzitzis on a pig, but it's still treif. This is what the pig teaches us not to be. Don't wear your frumkeit on your sleeve and then do things that you think are behind the curtain, because eventually everything is known. And if you're not afraid of HaKadosh Baruch Hu and you're more afraid of how you look on the outside, tzizachin vei and oivavoi. And we see today, we live in a generation where you can't hide anything. It all comes out. There's an eye in the sky. And we know there's an eye in the sky. But even you learn from Waze. They know what's doing in the traffic you can't see, and the GPS tells you. I remember at my daughter Shandy's graduation, Rebbetzin Newman from Beria, Zecher Tzadeket Levracha. She said everybody has to have a GPS, a God positioning satellite, to know that there's an eye in the sky. From the pig we learn. Don't be that guy. Don't be the one that wears their frumkeit outside and then does things that wind up embarrassing the whole community. That is what a pig is. Today, Rabbosai, is Yom HaShoah. There are 2 memorial days in Israel. One that reminds us the cost of having a state. That's Yom HaZikaron, that's coming up this week. And Yom HaShoah, that reminds us of the cost of not having a Jewish state. We spoke last week about V'hi she'amda, she'b'chol dar v'dar amdim aleinu l'chalosenu v'akadosh baruch hu matzilenu miyadam. At 10 o'clock this morning in Israel, the siren wailed, and wherever anybody was, every Jew in the state, hopefully, stood at attention and memorialized the 6 million Kedoshim that died, more than 6 million, really more like 7.5, that died in World War II at the hands of the Nazis. And what a price we paid. But here we are, in Eretz Yisrael, sovereign in our own land, after a very bloody and painful 2,000-year exile. And we can never forget the price we paid and the price we continue to pay for this freedom. And freedom is not free. If we look at the bottom of this graphic, we'll see a soldier saluting. That is the Umschlagplatz. The Umschlagplatz is the square outside of the Warsaw Ghetto where millions of Jews went to their death in Auschwitz. Ruchi and I were there, I think it was 2012, on March of the Living with the Moatzah of Nachal Sorek, and we witnessed one of these ceremonies. Senior officers go to the Umschlagplatz to swear in, and their oath is, "We are the IDF. What happened here will never happen again if we can help it. With the help of God, we will never let this happen again." And then they sing Hatikva. I cannot tell you how emotional a ceremony that is. And to have witnessed it live is something that I think every Jew should do. It's not an easy trip. It's not an easy ceremony. but you realize the cost of freedom, of having a sovereign Jewish state, to be able to defend ourselves for the first time since the monarchy. Let us never forget those that perished. Let us never forget those who survived. And let us never forget the soldiers of the IDF that gave and continue to pay or give the ultimate sacrifice to the people and the state of Israel. Shabbos Makar HaBracha. Of all the things we said here today, let us remember that without the Shabbat, there would not be a Jewish state, or a Jewish people for that matter, because more than the Jews have kept Shabbos, Shabbos has kept the Jews. May it be a beautiful, meaningful Shabbat. Thank you for joining us. Shabbat Shalom. Good Shabbos. Make it a wonderful weekend.